Sophia trudged up the driveway with her shoulders slumped, her pink backpack looking heavier than usual. The 8-year-old's normally bouncy steps were missing as she made her way to the front door. Her father, Mark, noticed the change in his daughter's demeanor immediately. He had been waiting by the window as he did every day, watching for the yellow school bus to drop her off. "Hey, sweetheart," Mark called out as she entered, his voice warm but concerned. He set down his coffee mug on the kitchen counter and knelt to her level. "How was school today?" Sophia avoided his eyes, staring at her light-up sneakers instead. "It was okay," she mumbled, dropping her backpack by the door with a soft thud. Mark gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You sure about that? You look a bit down." He had always prided himself on being able to read his daughter's emotions. Since her mom had taken that job overseas 3 years ago, it had been just the two of them and they'd grown especially close. Sophia fidgeted with the zipper of her jacket. "Dad," she started, then paused. The bus driver did it again. Mark's brow furrowed. Last week, Sophia had mentioned that the bus driver, Mr. Jenkins, played his radio too loudly. Some pop station that blasted music that wasn't always appropriate for elementary school kids. Mark had made a mental note to call the school about it, but had gotten caught up with work deadlines. "The loud music?" he asked, guiding her to the kitchen table where he'd already set out a snack. Apple slices and peanut butter, her favorite. Sophia nodded slowly, but something in her eyes told Mark there might be more to the story. She picked up an apple slice, but just held it, not taking a bite. "Was it really loud today?" Mark prompted, sliding into the chair across from her. "Yeah," Sophia said. "But also—" She trailed off, suddenly very interested in dipping her apple into the peanut butter. "He told me I have to sit in the front seat, right behind him. He says it's because I talk too much, but I don't, Dad. I really don't." Mark felt a small twinge of unease. "You've always been good on the bus. I've never heard complaints about you talking too much." He reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. "Has he made other kids sit up front too?" Sophia shook her head. "Just me. And Lily sometimes, but only when she sits with me." She finally took a small bite of her apple, chewing thoughtfully. "He keeps looking at me in that big mirror. It makes my tummy feel weird." Mark tried to keep his expression neutral despite the alarm bells now ringing in his head. "How long has this been happening, sweetie?" "A couple weeks, I think," Sophia said with a child's vague sense of time. "Can you drive me to school tomorrow, please?" "Of course I can," Mark said without hesitation. He watched as relief washed over his daughter's face. "You know you can tell me anything that makes you uncomfortable, right, no matter what?" Sophia nodded, her mood visibly lifting now that she knew she wouldn't have to ride the bus the next day. "Can we have pizza for dinner?" she asked, the resilience of childhood allowing her to bounce back quickly. "You bet," Mark smiled, ruffling her hair. "Why don't you go change and get started on your homework while I make the call?" As Sophia scampered off to her room, Mark's smile faded. He pulled out his phone, but instead of calling for pizza, he opened his calendar app. He would need to rearrange his work schedule to drive Sophia to school for the foreseeable future. Then he'd need to make some calls, first to some other parents, then to the school. Later that evening, after pizza and a movie night that had restored Sophia's spirits, Mark tucked her into bed. Her room was a cozy space filled with books and stuffed animals, walls painted a soft yellow at her request. "Dad?" Sophia asked as he pulled her unicorn comforter up to her chin. "Are you mad at me?" Mark's heart sank. "Mad at you?" "No, sweetheart. Why would you think that?" She hugged her favorite teddy bear closer. "Because of what I said about Mr. Jenkins. He told us that bus problems stay on the bus. That's what he always says." Mark took a deep breath, careful to control his rising anger, not at Sophia, but at the situation. "Sophia, listen to me," he said gently but firmly. "You did exactly the right thing by telling me. There are no secrets you need to keep that make you feel uncomfortable. Not ever. Okay?" Sophia nodded, her eyes growing heavy with sleep. "Okay, Dad. I love you, kiddo," Mark said, placing a kiss on her forehead. "Love you too," she murmured, already drifting off. Mark quietly left the room, leaving her door cracked open just the way she liked it. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall for a moment, collecting his thoughts. His protective instincts were in overdrive, but he knew he needed to handle this carefully. After checking that Sophia was asleep, he went to the kitchen and made himself a cup of tea. Then he sat at the dining room table with his laptop and began composing an email to Sophia's teacher, Ms. Chen. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something was clearly wrong, and he needed more information. He wrote carefully, asking if Ms. Chen had noticed any changes in Sophia's behavior at school. He mentioned the bus situation in general terms, not wanting to make accusations without more facts. As he typed, he remembered the parent directory he'd received at the beginning of the school year. He dug it out from a drawer and began making a list of parents whose children might also ride Sophia's bus. Tomorrow he would start making calls. As a single dad, Mark had learned to build a network of other parents he could reach out to. Now he'd need that network more than ever. He glanced at the hallway leading to Sophia's room. His daughter had always been trusting and open, qualities he cherished. The thought that someone might take advantage of that trust filled him with a cold fury that he carefully tucked away. Right now, Sophia needed him calm and clear-headed. Mark closed his laptop and sipped his cooling tea. He would drive Sophia to school in the morning, speak with Ms. Chen in person if possible, and start gathering information. Something told him this wasn't just about loud music or assigned seats. His daughter's comfort and safety were at stake, and nothing was more important than that. He rinsed his mug in the sink and checked the locks on the doors, his nightly routine. As he passed Sophia's room on the way to his own, he paused to listen to her soft breathing. "Don't worry, sweetheart," he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. "Dad's on it." The next morning, Mark woke up earlier than usual. He'd spent half the night tossing and turning, his mind racing with concerns about what Sophia had told him. He quietly prepared breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, hoping the smell would wake Sophia gently. Sure enough, she padded into the kitchen a few minutes later, still in her cloud-patterned pajamas, her hair a tangled mess. "Morning, Dad," she yawned, climbing onto a stool at the kitchen counter. "Morning, sunshine," Mark replied, sliding a plate in front of her. "Sleep okay?" Sophia nodded, picking up her fork. "Are you still driving me to school today?" "Absolutely," Mark assured her, pouring himself a second cup of coffee. He watched as relief washed over her face, confirming his suspicions that something more serious was happening on that bus. "In fact, I thought maybe I could drive you for the rest of the week while we figure things out." Sophia's eyes lit up. "Really? That would be awesome." "And," Mark added casually, buttering a piece of toast, "I was thinking of talking to Ms. Chen today just to say hello. Is that okay with you?" Sophia hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Just don't make it weird, Dad." Mark couldn't help but smile at her 8-year-old concern about social embarrassment. "Promise, super casual, you won't even know we talked." After breakfast, Sophia got ready for school with unusual speed, another sign that avoiding the bus was a powerful motivator. As they drove to school, Mark tried to gather more information, keeping his tone light and conversational. "So, who else rides your bus in your class? Is Lily the only one?" Sophia gazed out the window, watching the familiar streets pass by. "No. There's also Ben and Aditya and Taylor, and some older kids from 4th and 5th grade. Do you all sit wherever you want usually? Before Mr. Jenkins started asking you to sit up front?" Sophia fidgeted with the zipper of her jacket. "Yeah, mostly. Some kids always sit in the back because they say that's the cool spot." She turned to look at him. "Dad, are you going to get Mr. Jenkins in trouble?" Mark chose his words carefully. "I'm just trying to understand what's happening, sweetie. If something's not right, then yes, I need to make sure it gets fixed. That's my job as your dad." They pulled into the school drop-off lane, joining the line of cars inching toward the entrance. Sophia gathered her backpack, lunchbox, and the science project they'd finished last night, a model of the solar system made from painted styrofoam balls. "Need help carrying anything?" Mark asked, as they reached the drop-off point. "I got it," Sophia insisted, always independent. Then, unexpectedly, she leaned over and gave him a quick hug. "Thanks for driving me, Dad." "Anytime, kiddo." He watched her walk into the school, her pink backpack bouncing slightly with each step, the Planet Mobile clutched carefully in her hands. Only when she disappeared through the front doors did he pull away and park in the visitor section. Inside the school office, Mark signed in and asked if Miss Chen was available before classes started. The secretary, Mrs. Patel, checked the schedule and directed him to room 203. Ms. Chen was arranging books on a shelf when Mark knocked on her open door. She was a young teacher, probably in her early 30s, with a reputation for being both kind and no-nonsense. Exactly what first graders needed. "Mr. Wilson, good morning." She greeted him with a smile. "Is everything okay with Sophia? She just dropped off quite an impressive solar system model." "She worked really hard on it," Mark said proudly, then got to the point. "I wanted to ask if you've noticed any changes in Sophia recently, maybe in the past couple of weeks?" Ms. Chen considered this, leaning against her desk. "Now that you mention it, she has been a bit quieter during morning activities. I assumed she was just tired." She frowned slightly. "Is something going on at home?" Mark shook his head. "It's about the bus, actually. Sophia mentioned that the driver, Mr. Jenkins, has been making her sit directly behind him every day. She seems uncomfortable with him." Ms. Chen's expression shifted to one of concern. "That's odd. We don't usually have assigned seating on buses unless there's been a behavior issue, and Sophia has never been a problem." "That's what I thought," Mark said. "Have any other parents mentioned anything about Mr. Jenkins?" "Not to me directly," Ms. Chen replied. "But now that you bring it up, I did overhear Mrs. Lee, Taylor's mom, saying something about changing their transportation arrangements. I didn't catch the details." The morning bell rang, signaling 5 minutes until classes began. Students started filing into the hallway. "I should let you get to your class," Mark said. "But would you mind keeping an eye on Sophia? See if you notice anything else?" "Of course," Ms. Chen assured him. "And Mr. Wilson? Thank you for bringing this to my attention. We take these concerns very seriously." As Mark left the school, he felt slightly better knowing Ms. Chen would be watching out for Sophia, but he still couldn't shake his unease. He called his boss and explained he needed to work from home for a few days due to a family situation. Thankfully, his company had flexible work policies, and his manager was understanding. Throughout the day, between work calls and emails, Mark made a few discreet phone calls to other parents. By the afternoon, he had spoken with both Taylor's mother and Ben's father. Neither child had mentioned specific issues with Mr. Jenkins, but both parents noted their kids had become reluctant to ride the bus recently. Ben's father, Paul, was particularly concerned. "Ben asked me yesterday if he could start biking to school," Paul told Mark over the phone. "Which would be fine in the spring, but it's November and we live 3 miles away." When I asked why, he just mumbled something about the bus being weird now. "Did he elaborate on what weird meant?" Mark asked. "No, and I didn't push it," Paul admitted. "Maybe I should have. You think something's going on with this driver?" "I'm not sure yet," Mark replied honestly. "But I'm going to find out." By the time Mark left to pick up Sophia from school, he had compiled enough concerning information to justify a meeting with the principal. He waited in the car line watching the buses line up on the other side of the parking lot. He spotted bus number 8, Sophia's usual bus, and narrowed his eyes as a middle-aged man with thinning hair climbed aboard. Mr. Jenkins, he presumed. When Sophia bounced out of the school doors, Mark felt a surge of relief. She seemed happier than she had been yesterday, chatting excitedly about the positive feedback she'd received on her solar system model. "Ms. Chen said mine was one of the best in the class," she exclaimed as she buckled her seatbelt. "That's great, kiddo," Mark said, genuinely proud. "Hey, I was thinking maybe we could go for ice cream to celebrate." Sophia's eyes widened. "On a school night, really?" "Really?" Mark confirmed, pulling away from the school. In his rearview mirror, he saw bus number 8 departing, and made a mental note of which direction it headed. At the ice cream shop, while Sophia happily devoured a strawberry sundae, Mark casually brought up the subject of the bus again. So, I was wondering, if you could tell me more about what happens on the bus with Mr. Jenkins. You mentioned he makes you sit up front, but is there anything else that makes you uncomfortable? Sophia's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. She set it down slowly, her earlier enthusiasm fading. He says weird things sometimes, she finally admitted. What kind of weird things? Mark prompted gently, keeping his voice calm despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. Like... Sophia stirred her melting ice cream. He told me I'm his special helper, and that's why I have to sit up front. And he says I'm pretty a lot, which is weird because Ms. Chen says we shouldn't talk about how people look. Mark nodded, encouragingly, though his stomach was nodding. That is a bit strange. Does he say these things to other kids too? Sophia shook her head. Just me and sometimes Lily. She looked up suddenly, eyes worried. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart, not at all, Mark assured her quickly. You haven't done anything wrong. I just want to understand what's happening, so I can make sure you feel safe all the time, even on the bus. I don't want to ride his bus anymore, Sophia said quietly, pushing away her half-finished sundae. Can you keep driving me? Please? Mark reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Of course I can. And Sophia, I'm really proud of you for telling me about this. That was very brave. On the drive home, Mark made a decision. Tomorrow morning he would request a meeting with the principal and the transportation supervisor. Something was definitely wrong, and he wasn't going to wait around for it to get worse. As they pulled into their driveway, he glanced at Sophia in the passenger seat, now chattering about an art project her class would start tomorrow. He would protect her, no matter what. And he would make sure Mr. Jenkins couldn't make any child feel uncomfortable ever again. That night, after tucking Sophia into bed, Mark sat at his kitchen table with a notepad, organizing his thoughts. The house was quiet except for the occasional hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock, a sound that usually comforted him but now seemed to count down to something urgent. He wrote down everything he knew so far. Sophia's reluctance to ride the bus, the forced seating arrangement, the uncomfortable comments, the special helper designation. Then he added what he'd learned from other parents, their children's similar reluctance, the vague weirdness Ben had mentioned. It wasn't much to go on, but together, the pieces formed a concerning pattern. Mark rubbed his tired eyes. As a software engineer, he was trained to look for patterns to solve problems methodically. But this was different. This involved his daughter's well-being. He picked up his phone and scrolled to the contact he'd saved earlier, Principal Diane Reynolds. He'd call first thing in the morning to set up a meeting. For now, though, he needed to document everything. Opening his laptop, Mark started a detailed timeline, recording dates and specific incidents as best he could remember them. He even included screenshots of text messages from the other parents he'd spoken with, careful to redact their personal information. If he was going to report this, he wanted to be thorough. By midnight, he had compiled a 3-page document. It wasn't conclusive proof of anything sinister, but it was enough to warrant an investigation. Satisfied he'd done all he could for, now Mark finally went to bed. The next morning followed their new routine, a relaxed breakfast, no rush to catch the bus, and a peaceful drive to school. Sophia seemed lighter, happier. She sang along to the radio, her voice small but confident. Dad? She asked as they neared the school. Is Mr. Jenkins going to be mad at me? Mark's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Why would he be mad at you, sweetie? Because I'm not riding his bus anymore. She looked down at her hands. He doesn't like when kids don't listen. You haven't done anything wrong, Mark assured her. And you don't need to worry about Mr. Jenkins being upset. That's for grown-ups to handle, okay? Sophia nodded, though she didn't look entirely convinced. Mark made a mental note to address this further. He didn't want her carrying any guilt or anxiety about the situation. After dropping Sophia off, Mark didn't leave immediately. Instead, he parked and headed straight for the main office. Mrs. Patel looked up from her computer as he entered. Good morning, Mr. Wilson. What can I help you with today? I'd like to schedule a meeting with Principal Reynolds as soon as possible, he said. It's regarding a transportation concern. Mrs. Patel checked the principal's calendar. She has an opening at 2:30 this afternoon. Would that work for you? Mark mentally rearranged his work schedule. Yes, that's perfect. Thank you. Would you like me to include anyone else in this meeting? Mrs. Patel asked. For transportation issues, we usually involve Mr. Brennan, the transportation coordinator. Yes, please include him, Mark agreed. And if possible, Ms. Chen as well. With the meeting set, Mark headed home to work and prepare. He reviewed his notes again, adding a few more details Sophia had shared during breakfast. He wanted to be clear and factual, not emotional, though keeping his feelings in check was proving difficult. At 2:15, Mark returned to the school, his documentation folder tucked under his arm. The hallways were quiet, with students still in their classrooms. Colorful artwork lined the walls, fall trees made from handprints, crayon self-portraits, and paper plate pumpkins. Sophia's class had done a unit on community helpers. He spotted her drawing of a firefighter pinned to a bulletin board. Principal Reynolds greeted him at her office door. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and the kind of firm handshake that inspired confidence. Mr. Wilson, please come in. Mr. Brennan and Ms. Chen are already here. The transportation coordinator, a balding man with wire-rimmed glasses, nodded in greeting. Ms. Chen offered a reassuring smile as Mark took a seat. Thank you all for meeting with me, Mark began, placing his folder on the desk. I've been concerned about some things my daughter, Sophia, has told me about her experiences on bus 48 with driver James Jenkins. Principal Reynolds leaned forward, her expression serious. What kind of concerns? Mark opened his folder and methodically went through the information he'd gathered. As he spoke, he noticed Mr. Brennan's face growing increasingly troubled. Mr. Jenkins has been with the district for almost 7 years, Mr. Brennan said when Mark finished. We've never had complaints of this nature before. Actually, Ms. Chen interjected, I did some asking around after Mr. Wilson came to see me. 2 other teachers mentioned students who've become reluctant to ride that bus. They assumed it was just normal kid stuff, but in light of what we're hearing now. Principal Reynolds turned to Mr. Brennan. Do we have camera footage from the buses? He nodded. All district buses have been equipped with cameras since last year's levy passed. I can pull the footage from bus number 8 for the past month. Please do that immediately, Principal Reynolds directed. She turned back to Mark. Mr. Wilson, I want to assure you that we take these concerns very seriously. We'll conduct a thorough investigation starting today. In the meantime, Mark asked, what happens with Mr. Jenkins? Will he continue driving the bus? The principal and transportation coordinator exchanged glances. Standard protocol in situations involving potential misconduct is to place the employee on administrative leave while we investigate, Principal Reynolds explained. Mr. Brennan will arrange for a substitute driver starting tomorrow. And what about the children? Mark pressed. Sophia is worried that she'll get in trouble for not riding the bus, that Mr. Jenkins will be angry with her. I'll personally speak with all the children who ride bus number 8, Ms. Chen offered, not to alarm them but to reassure them that they're not in any trouble and that they can talk to us if they felt uncomfortable. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes as they worked out the details. By the end, a plan was in place. Mr. Jenkins would be placed on leave, the video footage would be reviewed, and the school counselor would be brought in to speak with the children in a sensitive, age-appropriate way. As Mark left the meeting, he felt both relieved and anxious. The wheels were in motion, but he couldn't help wondering if he should have noticed the signs sooner. Could he have prevented whatever was happening from affecting Sophia and the other children? On his drive home, Mark called Paul, Ben's father, to update him on the situation. They're taking it seriously, he reported. There's going to be an investigation. Good, Paul replied, his voice tight. Ben finally told me more last night. Apparently, this driver has been asking the girls for hugs before they get off the bus. Says it's his special goodbye or some nonsense. Ben thought it was weird but didn't know if he should say anything. Mark's stomach dropped. Sophia never mentioned hugs. Maybe it hadn't gotten to that point with her yet, Paul suggested. Either way, I'm glad you pushed for this meeting. I should have picked up on the sign sooner. We both should have, Mark agreed. But the important thing is we're addressing it now. When Mark picked Sophia up from school, she was bubbling with excitement about the classroom guinea pig she'd gotten to hold during science time. Mark listened, grateful for her resilience, for the way children could bounce between serious concerns and simple joys so easily. "Hey, Sophia," he said as they pulled into their driveway. "I had a meeting with your principal today." Her smile faded. "About Mr. Jenkins?" "Yes," Mark said gently. "I wanted them to know that some things were making you uncomfortable on the bus. They're going to look into it, and there will be a different bus driver for a while." Sophia twisted in her seat to face him. "Really, Mr. Jenkins won't be there?" "That's right. And Miss Chen might want to talk to you about it tomorrow just to understand better what happened. Is that okay?" Sophia considered this, her small forehead creased in thought. "I guess so. Will other kids know that I told on him?" "No, sweetheart. This isn't about getting anyone in trouble. It's about keeping everyone safe. And you're not the only one who noticed something wasn't right." This seemed to reassure her. "Okay. Can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" Mark smiled at the sudden change of topic. "Sure thing. Want to help me make it?" That evening, as they grated cheese and boiled pasta together, Mark felt a cautious optimism. The situation was far from resolved, but steps were being taken. He watched Sophia carefully stirring the cheese sauce, her tongue poking out in concentration, and silently promised her that he would see this through to the end, whatever it took. Later, after he'd read her a bedtime story and turned out her light, Sophia called him back. "Dad, thanks for believing me." Mark's throat tightened with emotion. "Always, kiddo. Always." The next morning brought a subtle shift in their household. Sophia hummed as she got ready for school, a sound Mark hadn't realized had been missing these past weeks. She even spent extra time choosing her outfit, a purple sweater with rainbow leggings and her favorite light-up sneakers. "Someone's in a good mood today," Mark commented as he flipped pancakes at the stove. "Lily texted me last night," Sophia said, climbing onto her usual stool at the kitchen counter. In the last year, she and her friends had been allowed to use their parents' phones to message each other through a monitored kids app. She said there's a new bus driver, a lady driver. Mark set a plate of pancakes in front of her. "That's right. Remember we talked about that yesterday? The school is looking into some things with Mr. Jenkins." Sophia nodded, drizzling maple syrup over her breakfast. "Lily's mom is driving her today anyway, just to be sure." "That's probably a good idea," Mark agreed, joining her with his own plate. "I'll keep driving you too, at least for now." As they ate, Mark noticed Sophia watching him with unusual intensity. Finally, she put down her fork and asked, "Did I do the right thing, Dad? Telling you about the bus?" The question caught him off guard. He reached across the counter and squeezed her hand. "Absolutely, without a doubt. You did exactly what you should have done. Why? Are you worried about it?" She pushed a piece of pancake around her plate. "Aditya said we might have gotten Mr. Jenkins fired, that he might not be able to buy food or pay for his house now." Mark chose his words carefully. "First of all, Mr. Jenkins isn't fired, he's just not driving the bus while the grown-ups figure things out. And second, what happened isn't your fault or Aditya's fault or any kid's fault. Adults are responsible for their own actions. But, no buts, Mark said gently but firmly. Your job is to tell a trusted grown-up when something makes you uncomfortable. My job and your teacher's jobs is to handle it from there. Okay?" Sophia seemed to consider this, then nodded. "Okay." She picked up her fork again and took another bite. "These pancakes are really good, Dad." "Thanks, chef in training," he smiled, relieved at her resilience. "Maybe you can help me make dinner tonight." The drive to school was cheerful, with Sophia singing along to her favorite playlist. As they pulled into the drop-off lane, Mark noticed several parents walking their children to the entrance rather than using the bus lane. Clearly, word had spread. "Have a great day, sweetie," he called as Sophia hopped out of the car. "I'll pick you up at the usual spot." "Bye, Dad," she waved before disappearing into the stream of children entering the building. Instead of heading straight home, Mark decided to park and walk to the main office. He wanted to check if there had been any developments overnight. Mrs. Patel greeted him with a knowing look. "Principal Reynolds was hoping you might stop by," she said. "She's free now if you'd like to speak with her." Mark was ushered into the principal's office, where he found not only Principal Reynolds but also a woman he didn't recognize. Mid-40s, professionally dressed with a badge clipped to her blazer. "Mr. Wilson, thank you for coming in," Principal Reynolds said, gesturing to a chair. "This is Officer Linda Pham from the Police Department's Special Victims Unit." Mark's stomach dropped. "Police? Has something happened?" Officer Pham held up a reassuring hand. "I'm here as a precaution, Mr. Wilson. After reviewing some of the bus camera footage last night, Principal Reynolds contacted our department, which is standard protocol when there's a concern about potential misconduct involving minors." Mark sank into the offered chair. "What did you find on the footage?" Principal Reynolds and Officer Pham exchanged glances. "We observed several concerning behaviors," the principal said carefully. Mr. Jenkins was clearly singling out certain female students, including Sophia. There were instances of unnecessary physical contact, a hand on a shoulder, brushing hair back from a face. And as your daughter mentioned, he was requiring specific seating arrangements that isolated these children. Officer Pham added. "There's also audio of some inappropriate comments. Nothing explicitly sexual, but definitely crossing professional boundaries." Mark felt simultaneously vindicated and nauseated. "So what happens now?" "We've launched a formal investigation," Officer Pham explained. "Mr. Jenkins has been interviewed and is cooperating. He claims he was just being friendly with the children, but the pattern of behavior is troubling enough that he won't be returning to bus duties while we investigate." "We'll need to speak with the children, including Sophia," Principal Reynolds added gently. "Our school counselor, Mrs. Tran, will be present for all interviews. And of course, we'd like you to be there for Sophia's." Mark nodded, his throat tight. "When? Would tomorrow morning work? Say 9:30, Officer Pham suggested. "We want to be thorough but also wrap this up quickly for everyone's sake." "I'll be there," Mark agreed. "Should I prepare Sophia somehow?" Principal Reynolds handed him a pamphlet titled, "Talking to Your Child About Difficult Situations." "This might help," she said. "The most important thing is to keep it low-key. Explain that the grown-ups need to understand exactly what happened on the bus and that she's not in any trouble. Mrs. Tran is excellent with children. She'll make sure Sophia feels safe during the conversation." Mark tucked the pamphlet into his pocket. "What about the other families? Have they been notified?" "We're contacting everyone who had children on that route," Principal Reynolds confirmed. "Some parents, like yourself, had already raised concerns. Others weren't aware of any issues. We're also checking Mr. Jenkins' previous employment records more thoroughly," Officer Pham added. "Sometimes in these situations, there's a history that wasn't properly flagged." Mark left the meeting feeling both relieved that action was being taken and disturbed by the confirmation of his concerns. He drove home in a daze, barely registering the familiar streets of his neighborhood. At home, he tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting to Sophia. Had she noticed the inappropriate touching? Had Jenkins said things to her that she hadn't shared yet? The thought made his stomach churn. During his lunch break, he read through the pamphlet from Principal Reynolds. It emphasized creating a safe space for children to talk, using age-appropriate language and validating their feelings without inducing fear. Mark made mental notes, wanting to handle the evening's conversation perfectly. When it was time to pick up Sophia, he pushed aside his turmoil and put on a cheerful face. She bounded into the car with her usual energy, clutching a paper with a gold star sticker. "I got 100 on my spelling test," she announced proudly. "That's fantastic." Mark high-fived her as she buckled her seatbelt. "Ice cream to celebrate? Again? 2 days in a row?" Sophia's eyes widened in disbelief. Special circumstances call for special treats. Mark winked. But don't get used to it. At the ice cream shop, over chocolate chip cookie dough scoops, Mark gently broached the subject. So honey, I talked with Principal Reynolds today. She mentioned that tomorrow they'd like to ask you some questions about Mr. Jenkins and the bus. Sophia's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. Am I in trouble? Not at all, Mark assured her quickly. They just want to understand exactly what happened so they can make sure all the kids are safe. I'll be right there with you the whole time. Sophia relaxed visibly. Will I miss math? We're starting fractions tomorrow. Mark chuckled, amazed at her priorities. No, we'll make sure you don't miss anything important. And speaking of math, did Ms. Chen send home that fraction worksheet she mentioned? The conversation drifted to safer topics, school projects, an upcoming birthday party for one of her classmates, plans for the weekend. Mark marveled at Sophia's resilience, her ability to process difficult situations and move forward. Kids were stronger than adults often gave them credit for, he reflected. That evening after homework and dinner, mac and cheese again at Sophia's request, they settled on the couch for their nightly reading session. Sophia had recently graduated from picture books to chapter books, and they were working their way through a series about a girl detective. Dad? Sophia asked as Mark closed the book after 2 chapters. Is Mr. Jenkins a bad person? The question caught him off guard. I think, he began, then paused to collect his thoughts. I think Mr. Jenkins made some bad choices, and those choices made you and other kids feel uncomfortable or unsafe, which is never okay. But why did he do it? She persisted. Mark sighed. Sometimes, grown-ups make mistakes or do things they shouldn't. The important thing is that you noticed something wasn't right and you told me about it. That was really brave. Sophia leaned against his shoulder. Will I have to see him again? No, Mark said firmly. He won't be driving your bus anymore. Good. She yawned, snuggling closer. Can we read one more chapter? Just one, Mark agreed, opening the book again. As he read, he felt Sophia gradually relax against him, her breathing slowing as she drifted toward sleep. Later, after carrying her to bed, Mark sat alone in the living room. Tomorrow would be challenging, but they would get through it together. He thought about the other families going through the same realization, the same conversations with their children. There was some comfort in knowing they weren't facing this alone. He pulled out his phone and sent a message to the parent group chat that had formed over the past few days. Meeting at school tomorrow. We'll get through this together. Our kids are brave. The responses came quickly. Messages of support, determination, and shared resolve. Mark felt a surge of gratitude for this unexpected community. Whatever happened next, they would face it, united for their children's sake. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Mark's mood as he helped Sophia get ready for school. He'd slept poorly, his mind racing with worries about the interview ahead. Sophia, on the other hand, seemed relatively unfazed, more concerned with finding her favorite hair clips than with the meeting. The rainbow ones, Dad, she insisted as Mark fumbled with her hair. Not the butterfly ones. Sorry, fashion expert, he smiled, swapping the clips. Better? She examined her reflection in the bathroom mirror and nodded approval. Much better. They arrived at school 30 minutes before their scheduled meeting time. Mark had explained to Sophia that they'd be talking with Principal Reynolds, the school counselor, and a police officer, emphasizing that she wasn't in trouble and that the officer was there to help keep kids safe. Like Officer Judy, who came to our class for Safety Week? Sophia had asked. Exactly like that, Mark had assured her, grateful for the positive association. Now, as they walked through the quiet hallways, most students were already in their classrooms. Mark felt Sophia's small hand slip into his. He gave it a reassuring squeeze. You okay, sweetie? She nodded, but her grip tightened slightly. Will you stay the whole time? Every minute, he promised. And if you want to take a break or need anything at all, just say so. They were directed. to a small conference room near the guidance office. Mrs. Tran, the school counselor, greeted them warmly at the door. She was a petite woman with a gentle demeanor that immediately put Mark at ease. "Hi, Sophia," she smiled, kneeling to the girl's level. "I'm Mrs. Tran. We're going to have a chat today, and I brought some things that might make it more comfortable." She gestured to a table where she'd set out coloring supplies, fidget toys, and a stuffed elephant. Sophia's eyes lit up at the elephant. "Can I hold him?" "Absolutely." Mrs. Tran nodded. "His name is Ellie, and he's an excellent listener." Principal Reynolds and Officer Pham joined them moments later, both making a point to speak directly to Sophia, introducing themselves and explaining their roles in child-friendly terms. Officer Pham had dressed in casual clothes rather than her uniform, another thoughtful touch that Mark appreciated. They settled around the table with Mark beside Sophia, who clutched Ellie the elephant on her lap. "Sophia," Mrs. Tran began gently, "we want to talk about your bus rides with Mr. Jenkins. Can you tell us what it was like riding on his bus?" Sophia glanced at Mark, who nodded encouragingly. "It was okay at first," she said, fingers playing with the elephant's ears. "He played music sometimes, which was fun." "And when did things start to feel not okay?" Mrs. Tran prompted. Sophia's brow furrowed in concentration. "Maybe a month ago? He started saying I had to sit in the special seat right behind him. He said it was because I was his helper. But I didn't actually help with anything." Officer Pham made notes but kept her expression neutral and friendly. "Did other kids have to sit in special seats too?" "Sometimes Lily," Sophia said. "And Taylor once, when Lily wasn't there. Always girls." Principal Reynolds and Officer Pham exchanged glances. Mark felt his jaw tighten but forced himself to remain calm for Sophia's sake. "And how did that make you feel?" Mrs. Tran asked. Sophia hugged the elephant closer. "Weird, and a little scared sometimes." "Can you tell us why you felt scared?" "Officer," Pham asked softly. "Because," Sophia hesitated, looking down at the stuffed animal, "because he would turn around a lot to talk to me even when he was driving. And he said things like I was his favorite and I was so pretty. And sometimes—" She trailed off. Mark had to resist the urge to finish her sentence, knowing it was important for Sophia to tell her story in her own words. "Sometimes what, honey?" Mrs. Tran encouraged. "Sometimes he would touch my hair or my arm when I was getting on or off the bus. And he wanted high fives, but then he started holding my hand. Too long after, it felt yucky." Mark's heart broke hearing the details Sophia hadn't shared with him. He placed a gentle hand on her back, a silent reassurance that he was there. "You're doing so well, Sophia," Principal Reynolds said warmly. "It takes a lot of courage to talk about things that made you uncomfortable." The interview continued for about 20 minutes with Mrs. Tran carefully guiding the conversation to gather necessary information while keeping Sophia as comfortable as possible. They took a short break halfway through, during which Sophia colored a picture while sipping apple juice that Mrs. Tran had provided. When they resumed, Officer Pham had just a few more questions. "Sophia, did Mr. Jenkins ever ask you to keep secrets? About the special seat or anything else?" Sophia nodded slowly. "He said the special seat was just between us, and that I shouldn't tell the other kids because they would get jealous." She looked up suddenly, worry crossing her face. "Is that why Aditya is mad at me? Because I got to sit in the special seat?" "Is Aditya upset with you?" Mark asked, surprised. This was the first he'd heard of any friction with her classmate. "He said I got Mr. Jenkins in trouble on purpose so I could be special," Sophia explained, her lower lip trembling slightly. "But that's not true, Dad. I didn't want to be special." Mrs. Tran leaned forward. "Sophia, sometimes when confusing things happen, kids try to make sense of them in ways that aren't quite right. Aditya might not understand the whole situation yet. Would it help if I talked to Ms. Chen about this?" Principal Reynolds suggested. "Not mentioning your conversation with us, but just to make sure all the kids understand that nobody is in trouble and nobody did anything wrong." Sophia nodded, visibly relieved. "Yes, please." As the interview wound down, Mrs. Tran turned to a more positive topic. "Sophia, You did something very important by telling your dad about what was happening. That was the exactly right thing to do. Indeed, Officer Pham agreed. You helped keep yourself and other kids safe. That's what really brave people do. Sophia straightened a bit at this, pride replacing some of the tension in her small face. Can I keep coloring for a little while? She asked, looking at the half-finished picture. Of course, Mrs. Tran smiled. Why don't you finish your masterpiece, while the grown-ups talk for a few minutes? With Sophia happily engaged in her artwork at the far end of the table, the adults spoke in low voices. She did wonderfully, Officer Pham told Mark. Her account matches what we've heard from other children and what we observed on the video footage. What happens now? Mark asked, keeping one eye on Sophia. We have enough to proceed with formal charges, Officer Pham explained. Inappropriate conduct with minors, at minimum. The district attorney will determine the final charges based on our complete investigation. Mr. Jenkins has already been terminated, Principal Reynolds added, and we're reviewing our hiring and supervision protocols to prevent something like this from happening again. There will be a parent meeting tomorrow evening, Mrs. Tran said, to address concerns and provide resources for talking with your children. We'll also have counseling available for any children who need additional support. Mark nodded, processing it all. And the other kids, will they be okay? Mrs. Tran's expression softened. Children are remarkably resilient, especially when they have supportive adults around them. We'll keep a close eye on everyone involved, but with proper support they should recover well. As they prepared to leave, Sophia approached Officer Pham with her completed picture, a colorful drawing of a police officer standing beside a little girl with a rainbow above them. This is for you, she said shyly, because you help keep kids safe. Officer Pham accepted it with genuine delight. This is beautiful, Sophia. Thank you. I'm going to hang it in my office. Outside in the hallway, Mark knelt to Sophia's level. I'm so proud of you, kiddo. How are you feeling? She considered the question seriously. Better, I think. Can I go to class now? We're starting fractions today. Mark chuckled, amazed yet again by her resilience. Absolutely. Let's get you to those fractions. 2 weeks later, Mark sat in the elementary school auditorium alongside dozens of other parents. The school had organized a safety forum in response to the incident. Mr. Jenkins had been formally charged, and the case was proceeding through the legal system, but tonight wasn't about him. It was about moving forward. Principal Reynolds stood at the podium addressing the packed room. Out of challenging times often come our greatest opportunities for growth, she began. While none of us would have chosen this situation, it has led to important conversations about child safety, both at school and at home. Mark glanced around, recognizing many now familiar faces, parents he'd connected with during this ordeal. They'd formed a tight-knit support network, sharing resources and encouragement as they helped their children process what had happened. We've implemented several new safety measures, Principal Reynolds continued, outlining changes to the transportation department, including additional cameras on buses, regular review of footage, and a new anonymous reporting system for students. As she spoke, Mark felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Paul, Ben's father, leaning forward from the row behind. How's Sophia doing? Paul whispered. Better every day, Mark replied softly. The nightmares have stopped, and she's actually excited about riding the bus again with the new driver. How's Ben? Good. He's been talking more about his feelings, which the therapist says is a positive sign. Their conversation paused as Principal Reynolds introduced the next speaker, a child psychologist from the local university who specialized in resilience in children. As the presentation continued, Mark reflected on the journey of the past month. It had been difficult, but there had also been unexpected positive outcomes. A stronger school community, better safety protocols, and most importantly, children who now understood that their voices mattered and that adults would listen when they spoke up. Sophia had shown remarkable strength throughout the ordeal. Just yesterday, she'd proudly announced at dinner that she had helped a kindergartner who was scared to ride the bus, telling him about all the new safety rules and introducing him to Ms. Garcia, the new bus driver who gave out stickers instead. of unwanted attention. The memory brought a smile to Mark's face. His daughter had not only recovered from her own ordeal, but had found a way to help someone else, turning her experience into something positive. As the forum ended and parents began to file out, many stopped to chat with Mark. He had become something of an unofficial spokesperson for the group, having been the first to raise serious concerns about Mr. Jenkins. "We're thinking of starting a parent safety committee," one mother told him. "Would you be interested in joining?" Mark didn't hesitate. "Count me in." Driving home that night, he felt a sense of closure beginning to form. There was still work to be done, healing to complete, a court case to follow. But the worst was behind them, and something good was growing from the experience: a stronger community, more vigilant protections for children, and the powerful lesson that speaking up could create real change. At home, he found his sister Amy, who had been watching Sophia, reading her a bedtime story. He leaned against the doorframe, watching the peaceful scene. "Dad!" Sophia spotted him and waved him over. "Aunt Amy's doing all the voices wrong. You have to do the dragon part." Mark laughed, joining them on the bed. "Well, we can't have wrong dragon voices, can we?" Later, after Amy had left and Sophia was tucked in for the night, she asked him a question that caught him by surprise. "Dad, am I still brave even though I was scared?" Mark sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair gently. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," he explained. "Being brave means doing the right thing even when you are scared. And that's exactly what you did." Sophia smiled, her eyes already heavy with sleep. "You were brave too, Dad." "We both were," he agreed, kissing her forehead. "Now get some sleep, my brave girl. I love you." "Love you too," she murmured as she drifted off. Mark watched her for a moment, her face peaceful in the soft glow of her nightlight. They had faced something difficult together and come through it stronger. And in that moment, he knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face those together too, with courage, with honesty, and with the unshakable bond between a father and his daughter.